as I said, pretty much, in line as far as the top line is concerned. On the bottom line, there seems to be a miss as far as Bajaj Corp in the second quarter goes. We're going to change gears now and talk about, the skilling needs for the Indian banking sector. A report done in conjunction between KPMG and the NSDC, which is the National Skill Development Corporation, suggests that the Indian banking and financial services industry is going to need 1.01 million workers by 2022. To understand the task on hand and how it's going to be addressed, Dilip Chenoy, Managing Director and CEO at NSDC, joins us on NDTV Profit today. Dilip, thanks very much for your time. I know it's a very busy sort of day for you. Let's talk about the key trends in the banking sector that make skill development such a priority and such an imperative.
So the key trends that we have noted in the banking sector, according to the report, which is on the skill gap analysis of the banking and financial and insurance sector, was first, the rural markets are under penetrated, and therefore there are around 400,000 unbanked villages that the RBI has identified where we have to take banking to. The second is that in the whole non-banking financial sector, again, the rural markets are under-penetrated, and significant other areas in the semi-urban and outside the urban sectors are also under-penetrated. The third is that the two new types of licenses being given for banking. One is the two new banks, which is Bandhan and IDFC, that have actually been launched, and the other is the very recent announcement of the small banking payment companies that has been approved a few weeks ago. So you're seeing new entrants into the banking sector as well, and the lack of penetration in the rural markets. Interestingly, in some of the mid-level and senior-level positions also, in many of the banks, there is going to be a kind of a block retirement. So therefore, the number of people that are required in those entities will also increase.
So I just want to just focus on the pure numbers per se. What is the estimate of the skilled workforce that is required for banking, financial services and insurance?
Yeah, it's actually 1.01 million is the additional requirement. If you see incremental human resource requirement between 2017 and 2022.
What are the kind of skill sets that are going to be needed? We know the big number, 1.01 million between 2017 and 2022. But what kind of skill sets?
So there are four very interesting different segments in the whole. First is what we heard as the banking sector. The second is the banking, and by banking I mean banking and NBFC. The second is the whole broking sector, as you see greater stock market activity going around there. The third, which you look at, is the insurance segment that is also expanding, and with IRDA's recent notifications, you're going to see a lot of activity there. And the new insurance products that are being launched by the government, that is the third area. And of course, the mutual funds and stock exchanges are another interesting area. And there are two types of skills that would be required here. One is for people in the managerial and sales force across these five different segments that I've talked about, which is a number that comes to 1.01 million. But more interestingly, there is an entirely new set of training and programs that have to be launched, which typically don't fall under the way skill development is defined by government now, but this is actually educating the investors, people who normal people, people who invest in stock markets, who buy mutual fund products, or who want to invest, in savings. A lot of individuals like you and me, who, if we choose to invest in this, also need to be educated. So this whole investor education piece is actually a huge piece that has not been covered under these numbers that we have talked about. The report that has been actually done in consultation with the Banking and Financial Services Sector Skill Council and driven by KPMG talks about the 5 segments that I talked about: banking, NBFC, insurance, broking, and stock markets.
Dilip, I'm a little mystified because on the one hand, technology is beginning to play such a big role in the banking, financial services, insurance space. And yet, on the other hand, the needs are increasing for skilled workforce. Do you see any contradiction there? Can you just clarify how it's actually emerging on the ground?
No, Manvi, I think you have touched a very interesting point here. See, what's going to happen is the nature of the job is going to change. If you look at the advent of ATM machines, for example, that has led to lesser number of, let's say, cashiers in the bank branches, right? But it has given rise to a whole new set of industry, which is the security vans that carry cash going across, transporting money, and a security guard at every ATM, right? So you're seeing some different thing. But then, we also need some education among people about how to use ATM machines, how to, withdraw cash. Now you're going to have cash deposit machines going to come in, so that's going to be a new entity. You've talked about mobile phone payments, right? But, an average mobile phone user needs to be educated how to use mobile money and how to train them. So that's why I said there are 2 different sets of requirements. We've actually captured one set of requirements in the report, which actually takes technology into account. And if we move to plastic money, for example, then as the finance minister just talked about recently, if we talk about that, then you will see that people in restaurants, people in shops, people have to actually get trained and to, how to operate the point of sale machines, how to negotiate with the bank, how to settle payments. So that's a different set of skills that will be required. And then you require back-end people there to actually do those transactions and, and look at it. And you'll see in the Indian context, you'll have a back-end thing there about talking about how people will get calls if you spend large amounts of money, and the whole tracking system. So there'll be a different set of jobs that will be created.
Which brings me to the question, Dilip, what is the NSDC doing? What are the action points from the NSDC to address these needs?
So if you look at it, the Banking and Financial Services Sector Skill Council first has defined the competencies required in a lot of the job roles that have been, that we just talked about, whether it be in the banking and the NBFC sector, or the broking sector, or the mutual fund sector, or in the stock trading sector. The second is under the programs that we have launched, let's say the earlier STAR program or the current Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Specific numbers have been allotted to the banking and financial services sector to actually address and enroll people for these courses that we are targeting. The third is a lot of our own training partners are partnering with educational institutions, colleges. We have 31 universities there where they're introducing these courses, let's say in Pune University or Delhi University and other such universities around the country, to educate people on the needs of this, and also certifying people in addition to, let's say, the BSc or BA or BCom or, BA honors economics degree that they come out. And the third is that we are encouraging the banks and other institutions to look at spending some of the CSR money to develop curriculum and online programs that would enable the delivery of these courses to a wide variety of people using technology that could be self-learning and certification. So these are three different strands that we are taking as we go forward.
Dilip, you've outlined the strategy. I just want to understand, what are the risks out there to your goals being achieved? What could come in the way?
No, I think, Manvi, if you look at the risks are really keeping pace with technology, because the half-life of skills and the use of technology in this sector is dramatically changing. The second is to get a collaborative effort across the various regulatory agencies in this space, like IRDA and the IBA have actually collaborated with the Banking and Financial Services Sector Skill Council. We need everyone to actually work together and to see that we don't work in silos but collaboratively work together to develop the standards, to accredit the required training partners and ensure that the employers in these sectors actually look at employing people who are certified and recognizing for the skills that they possess.
Dilip, I want to move away from the banking, financial services, insurance space that we've spent the bulk of our conversation talking about, and just take a step back and tell me right now, given that there are so many competing priorities, what is the thrust of NSDC's current training portfolio?
No, so if you look at the 20 high growth sectors for which we have done this analysis, and you take a program like the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, one of the methods that we've actually looked at allocating numbers and dividing the 1.4 million numbers is based in the same ratio as the ratio of the different sectors that are contributed to the overall skill gap of 109 million as we go forward. The second thing that we are doing there is we're trying to get, and this is the most challenging thing that we are trying to get the immediate job requirements from different employers in these segments, and saying that those training partners who can actually train to those vacancies will get a preference in terms of allocation of numbers and funds under the PMKVY. So that's how we are trying to match this demand supply going forward.
When I was asking about risk, Dilip, I was thinking probably the biggest risk out there is, constant dialogue between the NSDC and other skilling bodies and industry to really understand exactly what they need, and to have that as a dynamic process. Are you finding industry receptive now?
So, Manvi, I think what people first thought, NSDC is a nascent organization. The sector council has just been formed, the competency standards have just been developed, or they need to get regulatory approval. So over the last few years, we've seen the goalpost shifting, and I think now it's time where people are realizing the benefits of actually having a trained person. And as the employment and training cycles go through another 4 or 5 cycles over the course of 1.5 years, you will see a lot of industry actually believing in this format. See, initially industry is skeptical. They said we've seen it before, but when they hire from a certified training entity, and since the certification is given by a body that is industry-led, I think that's creating a change. But as you said, change is slow, but there is change. And I think as the training cycles go forward, you will see an exponential adoption of this going forward.
Dilip, I'm always tempted to cover all of the ground, but it's impossible. Thank you very much for fitting us in today. Good having you here on NDTV Profit.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Time for a quick break. When we return, Sangeeta Reddy, Joint Managing Director, Apollo Hospitals Enterprise, and Gagan Bhalla, Chief Executive Officer, Apollo Sugar Clinics, joins us. That's coming right up.